So today the topic of my presentation is spinal cord injury, acute management and emerging therapies. It's a comprehensive overview for the emergency medicine clinicians from initial trauma-based response to the cutting-edge neuroprotective strategies and rehabilitation science. I'm Dr. Aprajita Mitra. I'm the head of the Department of Emergency Medicine of ISL Hospital, Howrah. So coming to the starting, like spinal cord injury, it affects approximately 20,000 new patients annually in India alone. The majority occurs in the young male aged 16 to 30, making it one of the most socially and economically devastating condition in trauma medicine. In India, especially the leading causes is motor vehicle accident, which comprises of around 44 to 50%, and then followed by the fall from height, it is around 30 to 45%, then followed by occupational violence or penetrating trauma and sports or recreational account for the vast majority of traumatic SCI in India. It is as per the HS Chabra presentation. It can be found in the internet. Then from the emergency medicine imperative, the first 8 hours represent the golden window, which the early decision on this time can, like hemodynamic or immobilization and imaging, it directly determine the neurological outcome. This spinal cord injury actually poses an economic burden to the patient. Taking account of the huge expenses during its treatment, we can also expect huge post-ICU rehabilitation program cost. It can ranges from 65,000 to 1.3 lakhs per patient, depending on the injury level, underscoring the value of optimized acute care. So what is a pathophysiology? It is divided into primary and secondary injury mechanism. It's not just a single event, but a cascading process. So we have to know the both phases. In primary injury, the immediate mechanical insult is compression, laceration, or transection of the cord. This damage is irreversible and occurs at the moment of trauma. Contusion and compression, laceration and transection, distraction injuries, burst fractures with retropulsion are the examples. And for the secondary injury, evolutionary cellular and molecular cascades unfolding over hours to days. This is the primary target for acute medical management. Ischemia and hypoperfusion, excitotoxicity done by the glutamate surge, then oxidative stress and free radical injury, inflammatory cytokine release, ferroptosis, and demyelination. These are the methods of secondary injury. Secondary injury is potentially modifiable. Hemodynamic optimization, early decompression, and neuroprotective strategies aim to limit this cascade. Now coming to the pre-hospital management, which comprises of stabilization, immobilization, and rapid transport. As per the advanced trauma and life support framework, it begins at the scene. Like, firstly, we have to see if the scene is safe and do the primary survey. Assess the airway, breathing, and circulation while maintaining the manual inline stabilization. High flow oxygen is mandatory. Then coming to the spinal immobilization, apply a rigid cervical collar, secure a patient to a long spine board or vacuum mattresses and use head blocks with tape. Avoid the unnecessary movement. Coming to the third, that is the hemodynamic monitoring. Establish 2 large bore IV cannula, preferably on the median cubital vein, and monitor for the neurogenic shock, bradycardia with hypotension in injuries above the T6 level. Treat with judicious fluids and vasopressor if needed. And then coming to the rapid transport to the trauma center, pre-notify the receiving facility so that time is not lost, and transport to a level 1 or 2 trauma center with a neurosurgical capability whenever possible. Now coming to the emergency department evaluation, it is as per ATLS, neurological assessment and imaging. We follow the ABCDE sequence with spinal precaution throughout. Assess for the associated injury. Up to 40% of spinal cord injury patients have concomitant trauma. So how we assess it? By the Asia Neurological Examination. The American Spinal Injury Association, ASIA, impairment scale classifies the injury completeness like ASIA A, that is a complete, no motor or sensory function below injury. Then ASIA B, that is sensory incomplete only. Then ASIA C, that is motor incomplete, less than 50% key muscles of grade more than equal to 3. Then SCI D, that's a motor incomplete, more than 50% key muscles greater than is equal to 3, and SCI E is the normal. Imaging protocol comprises of CT, that is cervical, thoracic, and lumbar, then urgent MRI. CT is the first line for bone injury, more than 99% sensitive for the fractures, and MRI is essential for the cord signal change, disc herniation, ligamentous injury, and surgical planning. Then coming to CT angiography, considered in high cervical injury to assess the vertebral artery involvement. So this is the imaging pulse in spinal cord injury. This infographic shows the first line is the CT spine, which can accurately detect the fracture, dislocation, and bone injury, and it is widely available. Then coming to MRI, it is essential for cord edema, ligament injury, uh, spinal cord injury without any obvious radiological finding abnormality. That's cura, then prognostication. Superior soft tissue and cord evaluation guides the management and outcome by the MRI. Then we have to see the red flags, that the central cord syndrome, epidural hematoma, cord compression. Early recognition of the red flag signs actually gives a better neurological outcome. Now coming to the acute surgical intervention, its timing, decompression, and the stabilization. Surgical decision making in acute SCI has evolved dramatically. The AOS Spine Act guideline and landmark trials now support a more aggressive approach to early intervention. It is divided into 4 phases. Like less than 8 hours, it's ultra early decompression. Its emerging evidence suggests that improved motor recovery when decompression occurs within 8 hours, particularly in cervical spinal cord injury. Then 8 to 24 hours, that is the early surgery. The Surgery Scott trial and AO Spine North America data supports the decompression within 24 hours for incomplete SCI with ongoing compression. Then coming to 24 to 72 hours stabilization, posterior or anterior instrumentation to restore the alignment and prevent secondary injury from instability. Then more than 72 hours, that's a delayed surgery considered in medically unstable patient or those with evolving neurological status requiring reassessment. Progressive neurological deficit, open fractures, spinal instability, and cord compression with incomplete injury are absolute indication for urgent surgical consultation. Coming to the medical management in the acute phase, management of blood pressure, temperature, and respiratory support. In hemodynamic optimization, we have to maintain the MAP within 85 to 90 mmHg for the first 7 days post-injury. It's as per ANS and CNS guidelines. And use of vasopressor, norepinephrine, it's the first line of drug. After the adequate fluid resuscitation, avoid hypotension at any cost. Then coming to the temperature management, prevent hyperthermia, which exacerbate the secondary injury through increased metabolic demand. Target normothermia, that is 36 to 37.5 degrees Celsius. Fever more than 38 degrees Celsius should be treated aggressively with antipyretics and cooling measures. Then respiratory support, cervical injuries above C3 to C5 compromise the diaphragmatic function, and early reintubation and mechanical ventilation may be required in these cases. Aggressive pulmonary toilet prevents the atelectasis and pneumonia. Then coming to the metabolic and DVT prophylaxis, maintain the euglycemia, that's 140 to 180 mg per dl. Initiate chemical DVT prophylaxis with low molecular weight heparin within 72 hours when bleeding risk allows. Then use IVC filters only when anticoagulation is absolutely contraindicated. Now coming to the emerging therapies and clinical trials. The landscape of SCI treatment is rapidly evolving. Several promising approaches are transitioning from bench to bedside. Now coming to the pharmacological neuroprotection, there is riluzole, that is a sodium channel blocker. Phase 3 trials show modest motor improvement. Then methylprednisolone, it's a bit controversial now. NAS-CIS protocol largely abandoned due to the risk-benefit profile. Then magnesium sulfate, NMDA receptor antagonism, mixed trial results. Then minocycline, it's anti-inflammatory, promising preclinical data. Now coming to the regenerative and advanced therapies, stem cell therapy, oligodendrocyte progenitor cell, that is OPC1, in phase 1 and 2 trials. Then epidural spinal cord stimulation, restored voluntary movement in chronic complete SCI. Then brain-computer interfaces, neural bypass technology, enabling functional movement. Then anti-NOGO antibody that promotes the axonal regeneration. It's under phase 2 ongoing trial. Then rehabilitation innovation, early intensive task-specific rehabilitation combined with robotic exoskeleton and functional electrical stimulation, FES, shows the improved functional outcome. It's an infographic comprising of the ATLS 11th edition, the spinal cord injuries summary. As I have already discussed, first we will do the initial assessment, X, A, B, C, D, E. Then we follow the spinal motion restriction. Then we'll go to the shock management and map goals, that is 85 to 90 mmHg. Then we'll do the clinical clearance and imaging by CT as well as MRI. And then we'll follow the treatment directive. We have to do the early surgery and do whatever is suggested with the concomitant trauma. Then we will also keep in mind the future direction, the research frontiers. Coming to the next, the spinal tract with associated function. You can see the infographics. I'm just coming to the base, that's the summary of it's a spinal cord cross section at the cervical level. I'm just talking about the basic of it, like the ascending sensory tracts. Like dorsal column, it is related to the fine touch, vibration, proprioception. It's ipsilateral in cord, crosses in medulla. Then lateral spinothalamic, it's related to pain and temperature, crosses within 1 to 2 segments. Then anterior spinothalamic tract, there's crude touch and pressure. Spinoreticula, it's related to pain modulation, arousal, autonomic responses. Then spinocerebellar, that's unconscious proprioception, coordination, and balance. And coming to the descending motor tract, lateral corticospinal, that is related to voluntary motor control of distal limbs, fine skilled movement. Then anterior corticospinal, related to axial muscle and posture. Rubrospinal, related to facilitate the flexure movement, especially upper limb. Then reticulospinal, medial, that is related to posture, gait, and locomotion. Vestibulospinal, related to balance, posture, extensor tone. Tectospinal, related to reflexes for visual and auditory stimuli. Now coming to the very popular SCI syndromes. So number 1, the central cord syndrome. Key features are upper limb weakness is more than the lower limb. How it occurs, the central gray matter damages commonly from the hyperextension injury, often in elderly. So we have to think about this injury when there is history of fall in elderly patient or the diving injuries. And then coming to the Brown-Sequard syndrome, here there is ipsilateral motor loss plus contralateral pain loss. It occurs by the hemisection of the cord, usually from the penetrating trauma. We have to think about this trauma in case of penetrating injuries, stab wounds with this kind of feature. Then anterior cord syndrome. Here we find the motor loss and pain and temperature loss. It happens when the damage to anterior two-thirds of the cord, usually from anterior spinal artery occlusion. We have to think in case of uncontrolled hypotension, spinal surgery, disc herniation. And then posterior cord syndrome, which is related to loss of proprioception, vibration, and position, and occurs when damage to the posterior column occurs. And we have to think this type of injury in case of posterior spinal artery syndrome, vitamin B12 deficiency with subacute combined degeneration. Then conus medullary syndrome. Here we can find the early bowel or bladder dysfunction. There is clinical pattern is saddle anesthesia, then variable lower limb weakness. We have to think this type of injuries in case of tumor, trauma, infection, ischemia. We have to recognize the pattern and localize the lesion and save the cord. Then long-term complication and management, autonomic dysreflexia, spasticity, and pain. What is autonomic dysreflexia? It's a life-threatening emergency in injuries above T6 level, triggered by noxious stimuli like bladder distension, bowel impaction, presence with severe hypertension, bradycardia, and pounding headache. Immediate action, sit the patient upright, remove the trigger, administer nifedipine or nitroglycerin if BP remains elevated. Then spasticity, velocity-dependent hypertonia affecting 65 to 78% of SA patients, managed with baclofen, oral or intrathecal, then tizanide, botulinum toxin injection, and physical therapy. Severe cases may require intrathecal baclofen pumps or surgical rhizotomy. The neuropathic pain, it affects up to 80% of SA patients and is often refractory. First-line agents include gabapentin, pregabalin, and amitriptyline. Opioids should be used very cautiously. Multimodal pain management and psychological support are essential component of care. Then other systemic complications include the neurogenic bowel and bladder recurring structure program, pressure ulcer, leading cause of rehospitalization, then heterotrophic ossification, osteoporosis, and increased cardiovascular risk. Comprehensive follow-up in a specialized SCI clinic is critical in these cases. Then key takeaways and future direction. Emergency medicine clinicians are the first and the most critical link in the SCI care continuum. So our decision in the first hour shape the trajectory of a patient's entire life. Immobilize immediately. Here we have to remember the time is fine. Strict spinal precautions from scene to ICU. Inadequate immobilization converts the incomplete injuries to complete. Then protect the cord, maintain MAP 85 to 90 mmHg for 7 days. It prevents the hypoxia, then hypotension and hyperthermia aggressively. Then act within the golden window, early decompression, less than 24 hours, ideally less than 8 hours, improves the motor recovery in incomplete cervical spinal cord injury. Then stay current, neuroprotection, stem cell, epidural stimulation, and BCIs are the reshaping SCI outcomes. Engage with emerging evidence. The goal is not just survival, it is meaningful recovery. Every intervention in the acute phase is an investment in the patient's long-term neurological potential. In case of Indian emergency medicine perspective, what India needs? It needs a pre-hospital spine system. It needs better trauma transport, affordable rehabilitation, rural trauma training, and national SCI registries. The future of SCI survival in India will be decided in the first golden hour. So coming to a case, it's a 25-year-old male with bike accident presented with hypertension, bradycardia, and quadriparesis. So what will be the case? In our mind, the first thing we'll think about the neurogenic shock, which is caused by the spinal cord injury. So what is the first vasopressor of choice? As per our discussion already, it is the norepinephrine. So this is my presentation. It is as per the ATLS guideline, AO Spine SCI guidelines, WHO SCI resources, and the recent SCI neuroprotection and stem cell journals. This is my contact number. You can contact me for further information. So this is an infographic presentation made with the help of AI. You can see this is a ideal situation of a spinal cord injury where there is a possible fall from height injury, alleged history, and with a possible spinal cord injury. We have to start from the scene of injury. We have to immobilize and quickly transfer the patient to a trauma center. Here, the main thing is immobilization manual, inline immobilization, cervical collar, that's the Philadelphia collar, spinal board, neurological check, maintain the oxygenation and blood pressure, no unnecessary movement. Then you have to priorly inform the trauma center, and when you reach the patient in the trauma center, quickly assess for the ABCD as per ATLS guideline and do the CT or MRI, whichever is at earliest. Then we'll diagnose the case early and take the early measurement, early management to save the patient. So early recognition, spine protection, and teamwork, it leads to the better outcome and brighter tomorrow. Thank you.